Hello and welcome to Elden Ring. Today we're going to be testing the Marais Executioner Sword against the Sword of Night and Flame. So I'll get rid of our talismans first so we can give it a raw test. Here's the Sword of Night and Flame +9. If you boost this to +10, it does increase the scaling by one letter on every attribute scaling. So it's one that might be worth using a Ancient Dragonstone on. Reasonably low stats there. Here's the Marais Executioner Sword. This one scales with Strength, Dexterity and Arcane. So it's a slightly different weapon in terms of utility, but a similar sort of stats requirement. And I think it maybe does a similar job for a different build. Here's a Marais Executioner Sword. It does that multiple hit thrusting attack. We've got about 64 damage there with the +9. So that's not too bad. And it's poise damaging him and sitting him on his back as well. Bit of a long wind up, which you can be knocked out of, but not bad. That seems to work reasonably well. So let's go back to the site of Grace now, and we'll reset and try the Sword of Night and Flame. So this basically does more or less a version of Comet Azure. I mean, that's done 2,000 damage, put him on his back, and you can do it from range. The flame attack has got a big wind up. So I'm getting rather pummeled here by Mr. Fellow, and I don't think he likes the Sword of Night and Flame. Again, I'm trying to get that flame attack in, but the wind up on it is absolutely massive. Whether it has a utility against large groups of small enemies, I can imagine it maybe does do. But in terms of the two attacks which you have available to you, the Sword of Night and Flame, the beam attack, which is basically kind of like a slightly weaker, shorter range Comet Azure, seems to be by far the one with the most utility. And to me, it functions a lot like the Marais Executioner Sword, but you can do it from a slightly greater distance. The poise damage, it does seem to do some. Sometimes you do put them on the backs with it. And again, with three hits with that there, and we've taken him on his back and killed him. And we didn't even have to get close. Didn't have that holding him in a stun lock effect that the Marais Executioner Sword has. Maybe if you're sneaking up behind somebody with the Marais Executioner Sword and you can get in close, that's going to be more effective. I mean, what I'm trying to do here is trying the flame attack, sneaking up close. So it's there, and this time he can't get me, but we've only done about 2,000 damage. It's not done any real poise damage, and immediately he's on top of me. But the beam attack does the job much more effectively. We can obviously sidestep the beam. If you're locked on and you shoot, and they then move out of the way, then it's just going to be a waste of FP and it's going to leave you vulnerable for a minute. Didn't get the stance break that time. I feel like it's more reliable to break the poise when you're using the Marais Execution Sword. Let's just try the Marais again. So then that wasn't as effective then. Let's go back to the Sword of Night and Flame. And that to me looked like a good chunk more damage. And again, we put him on his back with it there. But he has dodged it. And he's got us. So he's got his own back there. So let's go back and reset again. And let's see what we can do with these two weapons. I'll just grab those runes there. Not many, it's only a couple of 100k. So this time, let's try adding some talismans to boost the damage and increase the utility of these weapons. We'll start with the Shard of Alexander. This is a great talisman you get from Alexander's quest. Well worth having if you use weapon skills. Then we'll go for this one, the Carian fingered thing, which makes skills cost less FP, and that's really useful, especially if you do a lot of summons and you get reduced flasks. The winged sword, the rotten winged sword talisman, is basically so the Marais executioner's multiple hits because it counts as multiple hits, it will buff the attack if you do more. Then we'll use a ritual sword talisman, which gives you a 10% damage boost if you're on full health, and we'll see how that changes things. Yeah, so we've got about sort of 2,000-ish damage there. From a slightly better range there, that worked better. We did over 2,700 damage. We took him out in 2 hits. I think before it was taking 3, if I remember rightly. Again, just out of range there. The trick is to get it so we're just at the right range, and that'll do that poise damage, get him on his back, and it'll leave us in a slightly safer position. That was a nice bit of damage, but again, it's very hard to time because of the incredibly slow wind-up. We're going to... Again, you can get knocked out of the wind-up animations for these. You need to be starting it far enough away that he's not going to get you. I'll just swig a potion there. Or 2. Or 3 even, and then we'll head back up and have a look at this last guy here. So there he is. Let's try and get the range just right, and he's surrounded back. This Marais execution sword works best if you don't get too close, but you get it just at the tip of your maximum range, and then it's really, really effective. So when you're using it, don't get too close, just be a few steps away so that you actually hit it with the tip of the skill. And that'll prove to be much more effective, I think. So, changes we're going to make for the Sword of Night Flame. This isn't going to affect the Sword of Night Flame at all, the Rotten Winged Sword insignia, because it doesn't, the beam doesn't count as multiple hits, the flame doesn't count as multiple hits. We may as well put something else on. Not 100% sure if the Godfrey's icon actually applies to this, but I think it should do. So we've got a few talisman buffs going out, and again, flat on his back, 2,600 damage. Here comes the next one, and he should stay on his feet then and hit us, but he's right down. So interestingly, the Marais took him down in 2 hits. The Sword of Night and Flame that time took 3. But obviously, we have to get a little bit closer for the Marais, but you do get that bit of extra poise damage out of it. So, that time the flame damage did 2,600, a bit better, but it didn't really do any poise damage, and it's a really horrible slow wind-up. The actual beam weapon, if you can time it and distance it right, has a lot more utility. Certainly against these bigger, stronger enemies. Again, it might be useful for taking out large groups of small enemies, but if you're trying to fight a boss or a big field mob, you're probably going to prefer to use the beam weapon of the 2 Sword of Night and Flame. We've got the magic shrouded cracked here in the flask, and the cerulean hidden tier to eliminate FP consumption. And we'll see what difference that makes. Should boost... this one should boost the flame attack. Obviously, if we go for the magic shrouding cracked here, that should boost the beam attack. And I think... I'll try that one there, because one of the problems is getting knocked out of the animation for this sword. And I'm not sure, I believe the skill, I don't know if it's classed as flame. We'll see what damage this does now, see if it helps. So again, try and get right at a bit close there really. We've been better off further away, but we got away with it. 2,500 damage, and he's jumped, which has avoided it. Again, we just broke him out of the animation where he was about to grab us, which was nice, but we took 3 strikes to get that one down. So let's just see what happened when we sneak up and do the flame attack. That was better. 3,000 damage there, because we've got the flame shrouding cracked tier on there. Still not really a boss killing damage output, and it's got a slow wind up. So we'll go back again, and this time we'll take the let's look at these spells here. Yeah, well, this is the spells for a sort of sorcery build I've been playing with, but we're going to swap this now for Howl of Shibiri, which gives a damage boost but does increase the amount of damage that you take as well. So we'll start out with the Golden Vow. And Howl of Shibiri. If you're doing flame damage, then you could also go for Flame Grant Me Strength. If you're going for physical damage, you could try the Blood Boil Aromatic instead. All of those 3 will stack with Golden Vow. Use the rune there. We've had the flask. Let's see what it does now. 2,600. Not notably massively better, really. Again, we're still taking him down in 2 hits, so not bad, but not actually amazing. Let's see if we can replicate it on his friend here. So we'll sneak up and just give him a touch, and he's dodged it with a little side skip there, so we'll have to try again. Again, because he avoided that partly, we've ended up taking 3 hits there. And again, he's still knocking us out of the animation for the Sword of Night and Flame Comet Azure style beam attack. There we go. That's him taken down, but it was quite unnecessary. This hasn't got amazing range. Whether you can increase it with the Arrow's Reach Talisman, I don't know. I haven't concluded it precisely, but I've been doing some testing, and I think the Arrow's Reach Talisman will increase the range on the Bolt of Gransax, which is incredibly useful. I've been trying it, and it seems that using the Arrow's Reach Talisman, the Bolt of Gransax range becomes quite insane, and you can hit bosses from the absolute far side of the arena with it. So again, I'll maybe do some actual proper testing on that and report back with another video, but knowing what spells you can enhance with and what skills you can enhance with the Arrow's Reach Talisman is useful. It has got some utility there. Certainly Rock Sling, that definitely works with the Arrow's Reach Talisman and gives you much better range. So this time we'll see what the Sword of Night and Flame does. Just change the mixed physics, so we've got the Magic Shrouding cracked here and the Cerulean Hidden Tier, I think we'll go for. Right, so Golden Vow, Howl of Shibiri, Drink a Flask. I'll use a Rune Art first. Then we'll use a Flask. And then we'll see what that beam weapon does now. 4,500 damage. He's more or less dead in one hit. Easily dead in 2 hits, even though he tries to dodge. So with this setup of buffs, this is working exceptionally well. 4,500 damage, clearly consistent, and a knockdown. Just about dodged that, but again, still can knock you out of that point, that stance when you're trying to do it. So yes, it can be interrupted, but in 2 hits you can deal 9,000 damage with this now. Get the range right, get him on his back. 2 hits and we didn't even have to get close. So we've quite thoroughly tested both the Marais Executioner Sword and the Sword of Night and Flame with various buffs and spells and potions and things and talismans to go with it. I think both have utility and both are great weapons. For me, of the two, the all-rounder is probably the Sword of Night and Flame. In most circumstances, I'd probably prefer it. It doesn't have the same ability to stun enemies, I don't think, that the Marais Executioners does. But you can use it at range. It's also worth noting that if you upgrade it all the way to +10, you increase the attribute scalings on all of them by a whole letter. So thanks for watching. Hope it's been interesting and useful. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more Elden Ring content.